Ben Mitchell stared at the massive ships hanging in Earth's sky. They looked like floating cities made of silver and light. For 3 days, the alien vessels had remained silent above every major city on the planet. No attacks came. No demands, just waiting. Then the message arrived in every language on Earth at the same time. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not come for conquest. We come with an invitation to the trial of souls. Each world in our domain must send one representative. Your species will be judged not by strength, but by the nature of your spirit. Ben had been working at the International Space Station when the ships appeared. As a former paramedic who became an astronaut, he never expected to be chosen for anything like this. But somehow, after days of debate, the world leaders picked him. Why me? Ben had asked during the video call with Earth's Council. Because you save lives, Director Chen had answered simply. That's what you've always done. First as a paramedic, now as our medical officer in space. If they want to judge our spirit, you represent the best of what we are. Now Ben sat in a small transport ship, heading toward something called the Sacred Nexus. The Zephyrian pilot, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, had not spoken during the journey. Ben looked out the window at the stars racing past and wondered what he was supposed to do. The transport ship suddenly slowed down. Through the window, Ben saw something incredible. A world made of crystal floated in space, glowing with inner light. The planet Xerion looked like a giant jewel spinning slowly among the stars. We have arrived, the pilot said in perfect English. The other representatives are already here. Ben felt his stomach twist with nervousness. Other representatives meant other alien species. He was about to meet beings from across the galaxy, and somehow he was supposed to represent all of humanity. The ship landed on a platform made of the same glowing crystal as the planet. Ben stepped out and immediately felt the artificial gravity pull him down normally. The air smelled strange but clean, like the ocean after a storm. Welcome, human. Ben turned toward the voice and saw the most beautiful and terrifying being he had ever encountered. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to be made of living starlight. Her eyes held the depth of space itself, ancient and knowing. This had to be Queen Vexa of the Zephyrian Empire. Your Majesty, Ben said, not sure if he should bow or shake hands. He decided on a respectful nod. You may call me Vexa, she said with a slight smile. Come, the others are waiting. Ben followed her through corridors made of crystal. Everything around them glowed softly, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. They walked for several minutes before entering a huge circular chamber. Ben stopped and stared. Around the room stood the strangest collection of beings he had ever seen. A massive creature covered in rock-like armor stood near one wall. Its red eyes glowed like coals, and Ben could hear its heavy breathing from across the room. This had to be one of the crag warriors he had read about. Near the center of the room floated a being made of pure purple energy. It had no solid form, just swirling light in a roughly human shape. Ben guessed this was one of the Mindari, the telepathic species known across the galaxy. A crystalline being that looked like a walking diamond stood quietly in one corner. Its surface reflected the light from the room, creating beautiful patterns on the walls. Ben remembered reading that the crystal people called the Nth were master builders. There were others too, a plant-like being with flowing green tendrils instead of arms, a creature that looked like it was made of liquid metal, a flying species with wings like a butterfly but the size of a person. Ben suddenly felt very small and very human. Representatives, Queen Vexa said, her voice filling the chamber. You have come from across the galaxy to participate in the trial of souls. This is not a test of strength or intelligence. It is a test of character. We seek to understand the true nature of each species. The rocky crag warrior spoke in a voice like grinding stones. What is the purpose of this trial? The sacred nexus is the heart of our empire, Vexa explained. It protects the most important things in our galaxy. For thousands of years, the Zephyrians have guarded it alone. Now we grow old and we must choose who will help us protect what matters most. Ben raised his hand like he was in school. Everyone turned to look at him and he felt his face get hot. What exactly are we protecting? Queen Vexa's ancient eyes focused on him. Life itself, human Ben. The Nexus contains the genetic patterns of every species that has ever existed. It is the backup for all life in the galaxy. Should any world face extinction, the Nexus can restore what was lost. Ben felt his heart race. This was bigger than just representing Earth. This was about protecting everything and everyone that had ever lived. The trials will begin tomorrow, Vexha continued. Rest now. Prepare yourselves. Tomorrow we will see which of your species has the spirit we seek. As the group began to scatter to their assigned rooms, Ben noticed the crystalline being approach him. I am Quill of the Nth, it said in a voice like wind chimes. You are the first human I have met. I'm Ben, he replied. Nice to meet you. Your species is very young compared to ours, Quill said. Most young species send their strongest warriors or smartest scientists. Why did Earth send a medical worker? Ben thought about it for a moment. I guess because when someone is hurt, we try to help them. It doesn't matter who they are. Quill's crystalline form seemed to brighten. Interesting. I look forward to seeing how you perform in the trials. As Ben walked to his room, he wondered the same thing. Next morning, Queen Vexha led all the representatives to a new chamber. This room looked different from the crystal halls Ben had seen before. The walls were black and covered with strange symbols that glowed and moved like living things. The first trial begins now, Vexha announced. You will each enter a simulation. The world you see will feel completely real. Your choices inside will reveal the truth of your species' nature. A series of doorways opened around the chamber. Each doorway glowed with a different color of light. Choose your door and step through, the queen said. The trial will begin immediately. Ben walked toward a doorway that glowed with blue light. As he stepped through, everything around him changed instantly. He found himself standing on a rocky hillside overlooking a vast city. But something was terribly wrong. The ground beneath his feet shook constantly. Cracks ran through the earth like spider webs. In the distance, he could see a massive volcano erupting, sending streams of lava toward the city below. The city was full of different alien species. Ben could see the rock-like crag people trying to move heavy debris. Crystalline nth beings worked to repair damaged buildings. Flying creatures carried others to safety from the high towers. Plant-like beings used their tendrils to pull survivors from collapsed structures. A voice spoke inside his head. Probably part of the simulation. The planet is dying. You have 1 hour before complete destruction. You can save only one group. Choose wisely. Ben looked around and saw that the other representatives had appeared in different areas of the dying world. The massive crag warrior was near a group of his own people trapped under fallen rocks. The energy being called a Mindari floated above a crowd of its purple glowing species. Each representative stood near members of their own kind. But Ben noticed something else. There were humans here too, scattered throughout the city. They looked terrified and lost, calling for help in different languages. For a moment, Ben felt pulled toward the human area. These were his people. Shouldn't he save them first? Then he heard a crash behind him. Ben turned and saw Quill, the crystalline being he had met yesterday. Quill was trapped under a massive piece of broken stone. The crystal person's light was flickering weakly. Ben ran toward Quill without thinking. The ground shook again, making him stumble, but he kept moving. Quill, can you hear me? Ben called out as he reached the trapped crystal being. Ben, Quill's voice was faint like distant wind chimes. I am stuck. My form is cracking. I think this is the end for me. No way, Ben said firmly. He started examining the huge stone that pinned Quill down. I'm getting you out of here. Ben looked around for something to use as a lever. He found a long metal bar from the wreckage and positioned it under the rock. But the stone was too heavy for one person to move. You should go save your own people, Quill said weakly. The humans need you. Ben paused and looked toward the human settlement. They did need help. He could probably save dozens of humans if he went there now. But he looked back at Quill, whose light was getting dimmer. My people would want me to help whoever needs help most right now, Ben said. And right now, that's you. Ben called out to other beings nearby. Hey, I need help over here. Someone is trapped. 3 different aliens came running. A plant being with green tendrils, a flying creature with butterfly wings, and one of the metal liquid beings Ben had seen in the chamber. We need to lift this together, Ben explained quickly. On my count. 1, 2, 3. All 4 of them pushed and pulled together. The rock moved just enough for Quill to slide out. The crystal being's light immediately began to grow brighter. Thank you, Quill said, standing up carefully. But why did you save me instead of your own people? Because you needed help, Ben said simply. And because I think we can save more people if we work together. Ben looked at the other aliens who had helped with the rescue. Listen, I have an idea. What if we don't just save our own species? What if we organize everyone and try to save as many as possible? The plant being, whose name was Bloom, rustled its leaves thoughtfully. Most would save their own first, maybe, Ben said. But maybe that's not the best way. The flying creature called Swift landed beside them. Explain your plan, human. Ben pointed to different areas of the city. Look, we each have different abilities. Bloom, your tendrils can reach into small spaces and pull people out. Swift, you can fly and see the whole area from above. Quill, you're strong and can move heavy things. I know medical care, so I can help the injured. And the metal being? Quill asked. The liquid metal creature spoke in a bubbling voice. I am Flow. I can change my shape to fit through small openings or become a bridge for others. Perfect, Ben said. Swift, can you fly up and tell us where the most people are trapped? For the next hour, the group worked together like Ben had never seen before. Swift would spot trapped beings from the air and guide the others to them. Bloom would reach into collapsed buildings with her tendrils and pull out survivors. Quill and Flo would clear heavy debris. Ben would treat the injured and organize evacuation routes. They saved hundreds of beings from dozens of different species. Ben barely thought about the fact that he was working with aliens. They were just people who needed help. When the simulation ended, Ben found himself back in the black chamber with Queen Vexa watching. All the representatives had returned looking tired and shaken. Interesting, Queen Vexa said, her ancient eyes moving from one being to another. The Krag saved 47 of their own people. The Mindari saved 63 of their kind. The Nth saved 31 crystal beings. She paused and looked directly at Ben. The humans saved over 300 beings of 17 different species, including several he had never seen before. The other representatives turned to stare at Ben. He felt uncomfortable with all the attention. I had help, Ben said quickly. Quill and Bloom and Swift and Flo all worked together. We couldn't have done it alone. Queen Vexha's expression was unreadable, but Ben thought he saw something like surprise in her ancient eyes. Tomorrow brings the second trial, she announced. Rest well. You will need your strength. As the group left the chamber, Quill walked beside Ben. Thank you again for saving me, Quill said. I do not understand why you chose to help me instead of your own people. Ben thought about it as they walked through the crystal corridors. I guess it's because when someone needs help, they stop being alien or human or whatever, Ben said. They're just someone who needs help. The second day brought darker skies over the crystal planet. Ben woke up feeling strange, like something heavy was pressing on his chest. When he looked out his window, the normally bright crystal formation seemed dimmer, almost gray. At breakfast, none of the representatives talked much. Even Quill, who had been friendly the day before, sat quietly in the corner. The plant being Bloom's leaves hung lower than usual. Swift, the flying creature, kept its wings folded tight against its body. Queen Vexa entered the dining hall with several other Zephyrian guards. Today she looked more serious than before. Her starlight skin seemed darker, and her ancient eyes held something that might have been sadness. The second trial awaits, she announced. This test will be harder than the first. Today you will face the maze of truth, where your deepest fears take physical form. Ben felt his stomach drop. He had never liked scary movies or haunted houses. The idea of facing his worst fears made him want to run back to his room. The maze is different for each being, Vexa continued. What you see inside will come from your own mind, your own memories, your own pain. Some of you may choose to turn back. There is no shame in this choice. The massive crag warrior, whose name was Stone, made a grinding noise that might have been laughter. Crag do not know fear. The purple energy Mindari being called wave pulsed brighter. We Mindari have learned to control our emotions. Fear cannot touch us. Ben said nothing, but inside his head he was thinking about all the things that scared him. Heights, small spaces, being alone in the dark. But most of all, he thought about the calls he had answered as a paramedic, when he couldn't save someone. Those memories still woke him up at night sometimes. Queen Vexa led them to a new part of the Crystal Palace. Here the walls were black like the trial chamber from yesterday, but they seemed to move and shift like living things. At the center of the room stood a single doorway that looked like it was made of swirling darkness. You will enter one at a time, Vexa explained. The maze will show you things from your deepest mind. You must find your way to the center and touch the heart of truth. Only then will the trial be complete. Stone the Crag warrior stepped forward first. I will show this maze what real strength looks like. The huge rocky being walked into the dark doorway and disappeared. For a few minutes nothing happened. Then they heard a sound that made everyone step back. Stone was screaming. The sound that came from the doorway was not the angry roar of a warrior. It was the terrified cry of someone who had found something worse than death. After what felt like forever, Stone stumbled back out of the maze. His red eyes were wide with fear and his rocky skin had turned pale gray. "What did you see?" Wave the Mindari asked. Stone looked at the ground. "I saw myself dying slowly, piece by piece, while my family watched and could do nothing to help." His voice was barely a whisper. "I could not reach the center," Wave went next, the energy being floated confidently into the darkness. But 20 minutes later, Wave came rushing back out, its purple light flickering wildly. "I saw endless emptiness," Wave said, its mental voice shaky. "Every other mind in the universe gone silent. Complete isolation forever." I could not continue. One by one, the other representatives entered the maze. Each one came back looking shaken and afraid. None of them had reached the center. Even Quill returned with cracks in his crystal form, saying he had seen his people's homeworld shattering into pieces. Finally, only Ben was left. "You do not have to do this," Queen Vexa said quietly. "No one has succeeded. There is no dishonor in stopping here." Ben looked at the dark doorway. Every part of his body was telling him to run away. His hands were shaking and his heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. "If I don't try, I'll never know if I could have made it," Ben said. He walked into the darkness before he could change his mind. Inside the maze, Ben found himself in a place that looked like the city where he used to work as a paramedic. But everything was wrong. The buildings were twisted and broken. The sky was the color of old blood. And everywhere he looked, Ben saw people calling for help. "Please help me," said an old woman lying on the ground. Ben recognized her. Mrs. Garcia from the apartment fire 3 years ago. She had died on the way to the hospital despite everything Ben had tried to do. "You were too slow," said a young man sitting against a wall. This was Tommy, the teenager from the car crash. Ben had worked on him for 40 minutes, but it hadn't been enough. "Why didn't you save us?" asked a little girl holding a broken doll. Ben remembered her from the school bus accident. He had chosen to help another child first, and by the time he got to her, it was too late. Ben felt the familiar pain in his chest that came with these memories. Every paramedic lost people. Everyone knew that. But knowing it didn't make it hurt less. The maze seemed to stretch on forever, filled with every person Ben had failed to save. Each one asked him why he hadn't been good enough, fast enough, smart enough. Each one blamed him for their pain. Ben could have run away from them. He could have closed his eyes and tried to find another path. But instead, he did something that surprised even him. He sat down next to Mrs. Garcia. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you," Ben said quietly. "I tried my best, but it wasn't enough. I think about you every day. Why are you talking to us?" Tommy asked. "We're just reminders of your failures." "Because you deserved better," Ben said. "Because each of you mattered. Because even if I couldn't save you, I can still sit with you now and remember that you lived." Ben moved from person to person, sitting with each one, listening to their pain, acknowledging their loss. He didn't try to argue or explain. He just stayed with them. Slowly, something strange began to happen. The twisted city started to change. The broken buildings became whole. The red sky turned blue. The people stopped looking angry and began to smile. "Thank you," Mrs. Garcia said, standing up and looking healthy again. "Thank you for remembering us." One by one, the people faded away peacefully, until Ben was alone in a garden full of beautiful flowers. At the center of the garden stood a crystal that glowed with warm white light. Ben touched the heart of truth and felt a warmth spread through his whole body. When he emerged from the maze, Queen Vexa was waiting for him alone. All the other representatives had gone to rest. "How?" she asked simply. "I stopped running from the fear," Ben said. "I sat with it instead." Queen Vexa stared at him with those ancient eyes for a long moment. "Most beings believe bravery means having no fear," she said slowly. "But you have shown me something different. Human bravery means being afraid and choosing compassion anyway." Ben felt tired, but somehow lighter than he had in years. "The final trial comes tomorrow," Vexa said. "Rest well, Ben Mitchell of Earth. You will need all your strength." Ben woke up to alarms blaring throughout the Crystal Palace. Red lights flashed in his room and the floor beneath his feet was shaking. This was not how he expected the third day of trials to begin. He rushed out of his room and found chaos in the hallways. Zephyrian guards were running back and forth, shouting orders in their musical language. Through the crystal walls, Ben could see that the normally bright planet Xerion was flickering like a dying light bulb. Queen Vexha appeared at the end of the corridor, moving faster than Ben had ever seen her move. Her starlight skin was pulsing with urgent patterns of light. All representatives to the central chamber immediately, she called out. This is not a drill. Ben ran toward the main chamber along with the other contestants. Stone the Crag Warrior was there, still looking shaken from yesterday's trial. Wave the Mindari floated nearby, its purple energy crackling with worry. Quill stood in the corner, his crystal form reflecting the emergency lights in sharp red patterns. What's happening? Ben asked as soon as he saw Queen Vexha. The sacred nexus is failing, she said, her ancient voice tight with fear. Something has damaged the core systems. If we cannot repair it within the next few hours, the entire station will collapse into the black hole at the center of this system. Ben felt his blood turn cold. How many people are on this station? 40,000 beings from across the galaxy, Vexha replied. Scientists, engineers, guardians, and their families. All of them will die if the nexus falls. Wave the Mindari pulsed brighter. What about evacuation ships? Not enough time, one of the Zephyrian engineers said as he rushed into the room. The gravity wells are already destabilizing. No ship can escape the pull now. Ben's mind immediately switched into emergency mode. This was just like the disasters he had responded to as a paramedic, only much bigger. What exactly is wrong with the core? Ben asked. The engineer, a tall Zephyrian with silver skin, looked surprised that Ben was asking technical questions. The quantum stabilizers have overloaded. The backup systems are failing one by one. Someone needs to manually reset the core. But the radiation levels are deadly. Anyone who goes near it will die within minutes. Show me, Ben said firmly. Queen Vexha stared at him. Ben, this is not your responsibility. You are here for the trials, not to risk your life for our problems. 40,000 people are about to die, Ben replied. How is that not everyone's responsibility? The Zephyrian engineer led them through corridors that were shaking more violently with each passing minute. Emergency lights cast weird shadows on the crystal walls. They passed groups of aliens helping evacuate civilians to the strongest parts of the station. Ben noticed that most of the other trial representatives had disappeared. Stone had muttered something about finding a safe place to wait. Wave had said the Mindari would use their mental powers to help coordinate communications. Only Quill had stayed close to Ben. Why are you following me? Ben asked Quill as they walked. Because yesterday you showed me that sometimes the bravest thing is to not run away, Quill replied. I want to learn more about human courage. They reached the engineering section and Ben saw the problem immediately. The sacred nexus core was a massive crystal formation in the center of a huge chamber. It normally glowed with steady blue light, but now it was flickering wildly between blue and dangerous red. Sparks of energy crackled around it like lightning. The manual reset controls are right next to the core, the engineer explained. Someone has to get within 10 feet of it and hold the reset button for 3 full minutes. But the radiation will cook anyone alive in half that time. Ben studied the setup. His paramedic training had taught him to assess dangerous situations quickly. What about protective gear? We have radiation suits, but they only work for maybe 90 seconds in that field, another engineer said. So we need to buy more time somehow, Ben said, thinking out loud. He looked around at the engineers. How many people do you need to coordinate the repair from out here? At least 6 of us to monitor the different systems, the lead engineer replied. Ben turned to Quill. How much heat can your crystal form handle? More than most beings, Quill said. But why do you ask? I have an idea, but I need everyone working together. Ben pointed to different areas around the core chamber. Can some of you create a cooling field while others monitor the systems? Maybe if we work as a team, we can reduce the radiation enough for the protective suit to work. For the next 30 minutes, Ben coordinated the most complex rescue operation he had ever attempted. The Zephyrian engineers worked to reroute power and create cooling fields. Quill used his crystal abilities to redirect some of the dangerous energy away from the core area. 3 other aliens who had volunteered helped monitor different systems, but even with all their efforts, the radiation levels were still too high. It's not enough, the lead engineer said, checking his instruments. We've reduced it, but whoever goes in there still won't survive long enough to complete the reset. Ben looked at the radiation suit hanging on the wall. Then he looked at the core, flickering more wildly now as the station shook around them. "How long do we have before total collapse?" he asked. "Maybe 20 minutes," the engineer replied. Ben picked up the radiation suit and started putting it on. "Ben!" "No," Quill said, his crystalline voice ringing with alarm. "You will die." "Maybe," Ben said, checking the suit's seals. "But 40,000 people will definitely die if nobody tries." Queen Vexa appeared in the engineering section, having followed them down. Her ancient eyes were wide with something that looked like shock. "Human, you cannot do this," she said. "You are here as a representative of your species, not as a sacrifice." Ben finished putting on the helmet and checked the suit's power supply. "Your Majesty, with respect, I think representing my species is exactly what I'm doing." He turned to face the core chamber. The massive crystal was pulsing faster now, and Ben could feel the heat even through the protective gear. "If this doesn't work," Ben said to Quill, "tell Earth that we tried." "Ben, wait," Queen Vexa called out. But Ben was already walking toward the core, toward the radiation that would probably end his life, toward the manual controls that might save 40,000 beings he had never met. As he got closer to the deadly energy field, Ben could hear his heart beating in his ears. But his hands were steady as he reached for the reset controls. This was what humans did. When someone needed help, they helped. Even if it cost them everything, Ben stepped closer to the unstable core, feeling the heat grow stronger with each step. The radiation suit's alarm began beeping faster and faster. Through his helmet, he could see the manual reset controls just a few feet away. The crystal core pulsed angry red, sending waves of deadly energy through the chamber. "Radiation levels critical," the suit's computer announced in his ear. "Estimated survival time 45 seconds. Ben reached out toward the reset button. His hand was shaking now, not from fear, but from the energy field affecting his nervous system. Around him, the air itself seemed to glow with dangerous light. Just as his fingers touched the control panel, a voice rang out behind him. "Stop!" The voice belonged to Queen Vexa, but it sounded different now. Stronger, more commanding than Ben had ever heard it. "Your heart is the bravest here," she said. Ben turned around, confused. Through his helmet visor, he could see Queen Vexa standing at the edge of the radiation field. But something impossible was happening. She was walking toward him, directly into the deadly energy, with no protective suit at all. The radiation that should have been destroying her seemed to pass right through her starlight skin without causing any harm. "I don't understand," Ben said, his hand still on the reset controls. "The core is not actually failing," Queen Vexa said as she approached him. "This entire situation is the real trial. We needed to see what each species would do when faced with certain death to save others." Ben stared at her. "You mean this is all fake? The 40,000 people in danger?" "The people are real," Vexa said quickly. "They are safe in other parts of the station. But the danger was created by us, and we can end it at any moment." Ben felt anger rising in his chest. "You made me think all those people were going to die." "Yes," Queen Vexa said simply, "because we needed to see your true nature. Not what you would do when you had time to think, but what you would do when there was no choice but to act from your heart." The Queen gestured, and suddenly the core stopped flickering. The red glow faded back to steady blue light. The alarms stopped blaring. The station stopped shaking. The other representatives left to find safe places or to coordinate from a distance. Vexa continued. Noble choices, perhaps, but only one being walked toward certain death to save people he had never met. Ben pulled off his helmet, feeling confused and exhausted. "So what happens now?" Queen Vexa smiled, and for the first time since Ben had met her, she looked truly happy. "Now you learn the truth about why we hold these trials," she said. "The sacred nexus is real, and it does contain the genetic patterns of all life in the galaxy. But we do not need a guardian to protect it." She led Ben back toward the main chamber where all the other representatives were waiting. They looked surprised to see Ben alive and unharmed. "What we have been searching for," Queen Vexa announced to the group, "is not a species to guard the Nexus, but a species worthy of joining the Council of Life." Ben had never heard of the Council of Life before. "For millions of years," the Queen explained, "the Zephyrian Empire has worked to preserve and protect all living beings in the galaxy. We have prevented wars, stopped plagues, and saved countless worlds from destruction. But we are old, and we need help from younger species." She looked directly at Ben. Most species, when they become advanced enough to travel between stars, focus on gaining power, territory, or resources. They think about their own survival first. Stone the Crag Warrior shifted uncomfortably. Wave the Mindari's energy flickered with what might have been shame. But occasionally, Vexa continued, we find a species that thinks differently, a species that sees all life as valuable, regardless of what planet it comes from or what it looks like. Quill stepped forward. You mean the humans? I mean this human, Queen Vexa said, gesturing to Ben. In 3 trials, Ben has shown us something remarkable. When others saved their own people, he organized a rescue for everyone. When others ran from their fears, he sat with his pain and chose compassion. When faced with certain death, he walked toward it to save strangers. Ben felt overwhelmed. But I'm just one person. I can't speak for all of humanity. You already have, the Queen said. Your actions have told us everything we need to know about your species' potential. Queen Vexa raised her hand, and the chamber filled with soft music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ben Mitchell of Earth, she said formally, I name you the first human ambassador to the Council of Life. Your species will join us in protecting all living beings throughout the galaxy. Ben felt tears forming in his eyes. What does that mean exactly? It means Earth will receive our protection and our knowledge, Vexa explained. It means humans will help us explore new worlds and contact new species. And most importantly, it means when we find beings in trouble anywhere in the galaxy, humans will be there to help them. Quill walked over to Ben. I would be honored to work with your species, the crystal being said. You have taught me much about courage. Even Stone the Crag Warrior approached Ben with something that might have been respect. Your heart is strong, small human. I hope to learn from your people's ways. As the other representatives came forward to congratulate him, Ben thought about Earth and how this would change everything for humanity. No more wondering if they were alone in the universe. No more worrying about whether they were good enough to join the galactic community. There is one more thing, Queen Vexa said quietly to Ben as the others talked among themselves. The trials showed us something we did not expect to find. What's that? Ben asked. In all our millions of years, we have never encountered a species whose first instinct is to help others, even at the cost of their own lives, she said. Your people may be young and small, but your hearts burn brighter than any star we have seen. Ben looked out through the crystal walls at the vast galaxy beyond. Somewhere out there were countless worlds full of beings who might need help someday, and now humanity would be ready to answer that call. When do we start? Ben asked. Queen Vexa's ancient eyes sparkled with starlight. We already have.